Okay, just wanted to show y'all a little trick real quick. Now, I said on these I want to put a hole every 2 inches for a net pot to go in. This is 3-inch PVC. When I set it up, like I said, it's not going to be an NFT. The water is going to stay about middle depth in the pipe. That way I can set the net pot in, roots can get down into the nutrients, similar to a floating raft, but they will also, stop that, they will also be able to go out into the area that's more has air and get oxygen. So I won't have to worry about putting in a whole bunch of air stones and all this, that, and the other. It's something I want to try anyway. It came from an idea I got from NPH Gardner on the Kratchkey, I think he called it, method of doing a floating raft where you actually elevated the raft once the roots got long enough and allowed the nutrient to drop down. You still had plenty of nutrient for the roots, but it also exposed an inch or so of the roots, a couple inches of the roots, allowing the plant to get oxygen. So all that extra aeration wasn't needed. But anyway, in order to make all those holes nice and even in a straight line down this pipe, there's a couple things you can do. A lot of people cheat and use the writing. Sometimes your pipe doesn't have that good of writing, and I've actually had it where it's like it turned in the mill and twisted. This one actually looks fairly straight. I guess you could use a straight edge along that to make sure you stayed straight. But say you didn't have a good mark there. Well, if you have a nice flat level surface like my deck, which is dirty and needs a good pressure washing, you can lay your pipe down, brace it in place, take a 2x4 or some other type of wood and pull up next to it, making sure there's nothing under the 2x4. Making sure the 2x4 stays flat and your pipe does not spin. Now you can take, keeping your pipe held flush and not letting it spin, and make your line along that 2x4. Now the 2x4 doesn't have to raise up to the height of the center of the PVC pipe. It just needs to be up a little bit. Because once you make that mark, spin the PVC around, you got a nice straight line running the length of that PVC that is perfectly straight and the same depth in. So if I use that as a guide, every 8 inches, all my net pots will be lined up. So as long as I install it with that line up, it gives me a drilling guide and everything should work out just fine. But that's a nice, easy way to make sure you've got a straight line down your PVC. It works with any size. Of course, if you go with smaller size, you need a thinner board, of course, but 4-inch, 6-inch, whatever. As long as you've got a nice straight board with no bows or anything in it, and since I didn't go all the way to the ends, what I can do is push the pipe back up, line that mark back up, finish it out to that end. Now with this drainage PVC has the swollen end on it for you to be able to put another piece in and glue it together without a coupler, so it throws you off just a little bit once you get down towards that coupler. But if you have regular Schedule 40 that doesn't have that swollen end on the end of it, it'll be perfect. And even with this, that little bit is not going to throw it off much. And it's only going to be right there at the end. And then, yeah. The last hole cup I drill, I might need to stay a little bit to this side of the line, over to this side, to keep everything straight. But anyway, that's a nice, simple, easy cheat, or trick rather, to be able to get you a good straight line down a PVC pipe to make sure all your holes line up and everything. Okay, I've made my lines using 2x4s, laid down my pipe so everything's nice and straight. And I went through and I marked every 8 inches for a net pot. Now, originally I had figured that I'd be able to make 15 in each pipe, or 10-foot section, but I forgot that I had to cut the swollen ends off in order to be able to put the caps or elbows on the end, and one of the tubes I had to shorten to make the scrap piece I had left over long enough to go across the end. So the scrap piece, or the end piece, no longer scrap, the end piece I'm going to get 7 out of instead of 6, just the way it worked out, because it's a little bit longer than 4 foot. And then the other two, one of them I'm getting 13, one of them I'm getting 12. So that's still 19, that's 32. So that's plenty of, no, it was 13 and 14. Sorry, one of them I'm getting 13, one I'm getting 14, so 27. So that's 34. So I'll be getting 34 net pots spaced every 8 inches, which is plenty of room for most of the lettuce that I'm going to be growing. Chard will do okay at that distance. I hope anyway. We'll find out. I know the strawberries will be fine with it. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to get my holes drilled. Now that I've got it all nice and marked out, I've got my hole saws here. I've got the 2-inch hole saw for the net pots, and I've got I think this is a 1 1/4. It's the size that I need for the male adapter just to be able to go through. So, because on my ends, since I'm going to have, the U shape with the 2 elbows, then on my ends, I'm going to cap them with these flat caps. And now I'm going to drill holes through them, put the male and female adapters with the number 18 O-rings, through, right there, to allow me to plumb everything. That way I can use 1-inch PVC to plumb over into the tanks, and then from there I'll put a coupling, a threaded adapter with a hose barb, and hook up my tubing from my pump. Now the drain side to just flow back into the tanks, probably into the sump. So I don't think, I know as a matter of fact, they're not high enough for me to flow back into the tanks without drilling holes in the tanks and stuff like that. I'm not going to do that. But at any rate, so I've got to get my holes drilled in these and my adapters in them. Now the way I want it set up, so that's going to be, say if that was level, all right, I want the water level to be about midway up the pipe, maybe just a hair higher. So I want to put my adapters in towards the one side, because that 1-inch adapter, about like that, that would give me my water height right there if I'm just a little bit down. So that's where I want it, so that when it's upright, the tube will be over half full with water. Half of it will be airspace, and that should work. Like I said, it's pretty much an experiment to see how it's going to do, but I think it'll work. And I did a segment on the canister filter that I'm going to put in line. So now I'm going to go ahead and get everything drilled. Hopefully you know how to drill. I don't need to video that. I'm going to get everything glued together. Hopefully you can follow the directions on your glue, and I don't need to video that. So I'll get everything drilled, plumbed up, hooked together, and then I'll show you the finished product. But that's what the plan is. That's what the experiment is this time. It's more of a channel than an NFT, with a couple inches of water in it, so the plant's roots can get down to the water, but part of the plant will still be up in the oxygenated region, so it can get plenty of air and see what goes. Hopefully everything will work and things will go just great. And if it doesn't, I can always just swap it over to a straight NFT simply by re-drilling the end caps and lowering the water level so that there is just a film through it. So we'll see. Either way, it's going to be fun. That's what it's all about. I'm really enjoying all this stuff, and that's what it comes down to, is whether or not you're enjoying what you're doing, enjoying messing around. And like I said, anything that works adds to self-sufficiency. It'll be more vegetables that I can grow in a limited space doing it this method, by adding just a very small amount to the width and depth of my fish tanks. It'll give me a lot of extra growing area. So, but that's where we're at right now. Okay, just a quick comment as I'm drilling these holes. Where the water inlet is for this tube doesn't really matter. So I was able to put the hole for the inlet wherever I wanted to. So I was able to avoid all the raised lettering and stuff on the outside and go ahead and do the way I normally would by putting the O-ring over the male side and tightening the female down to compress that O-ring, and that will give me a really good seal. Now, on the drain, since I need that drain to be as near an edge so that when I put this cap on, I'm not going to glue it. I'll be able to swivel it around to adjust that water flow, because I'll need it to be higher to start with than it will be eventually. So I'll need to be able to move it just a little bit. So I'm not going to glue this cap on, nor will I glue the 1 inch inside the fitting. But I could not avoid all the lettering on the outside of this one, and I was worried about it being able to seal, so I went back to another method. I put the male fitting through the hole and then put the O-ring over it. Now the inside's nice and smooth, and as I tighten the female side down, that O-ring snugs up just inside this lip. There's a slight camber to the edge right there, and it compresses the O-ring inside there and against that surface, so it'll still seal. So just sometimes you have to do things slightly different, but you can always make it work if you try. So getting closer. I've got to finish this one and then get all the 2-inch holes drilled for the net pots and then get it assembled. So be back in a few.